The dust clung to her throat like a second skin as she stumbled into the ranch yard that September afternoon in 1878, her dress torn at the hem, and her face streaked with tears that had long since dried in the unforgiving Texas sun. She had walked for 2 days straight, her feet bleeding inside boots that were never meant for such distances. And when the tall cowboy emerged from the barn with a look of concern etched across his sun-weathered face, something inside her chest cracked open like a dam that had been holding back floodwaters for far too long. "Miss, you all right?" His voice carried the warm drawl of someone who had spent his entire life under these wide-open skies, and when he moved toward her, she flinched instinctively before forcing herself to stand still. "I need work," she managed to say, though her voice came out hoarse and broken. "Anything? I can cook, clean, mend fences if you teach me how." The cowboy, who looked to be somewhere in his mid-20s with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of creek water after a storm, studied her for a long moment. His gaze was not unkind, but it was searching, as if he could read the story written in the desperate set of her shoulders and the way she kept glancing back toward the road as though expecting someone to come charging after her at any moment. "Name's Cole Garrett," he said finally, extending a calloused hand. "This is my ranch. Small operation, just me and 2 hands who help during roundup season." She hesitated before taking his hand, and when their palms met, she felt the rough warmth of honest labor there. "Eleanor," she said quietly. "Eleanor Hayes." "Well, Miss Hayes, you look like you have been through something fierce. Why do not you come inside, get some water and food in you, and then we can talk about work?" Eleanor wanted to protest, wanted to insist that she could start immediately, that she did not need charity, but her legs were trembling so badly that she feared they might give out entirely. She nodded once, a sharp jerk of her chin, and followed Cole across the dusty yard toward a modest ranch house built of weathered wood with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Inside, the house was surprisingly tidy for a bachelor's home. The furniture was simple but well-made, and curtains hung in the windows that let in the golden afternoon light. Cole gestured for her to sit at the kitchen table while he worked the pump at the sink, filling a tin cup with cool water. "Drink slow," he advised as he set it in front of her. "You are dehydrated something awful." Eleanor forced herself to sip when all she wanted to do was gulp it down. As Cole moved about the kitchen, slicing bread and cheese, pulling out cold beef from the icebox, she found herself watching him with a mixture of suspicion and cautious hope. Men in her experience were not to be trusted, especially not men who offered help to desperate women with nowhere else to turn. But there was something different about Cole Garrett, something in the straightforward way he moved and spoke that suggested he was exactly what he appeared to be and nothing more. "You running from something?" he asked as he set the plate of food before her. Eleanor's hand froze halfway to the bread. Her throat worked as she swallowed hard, weighing her options. She could lie, spin some story about a dead husband or a failed business venture, but the truth was she was too tired for deception. Too tired and too desperate. "I ran away from the only home I knew," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Cole pulled out a chair and sat down across from her, his forearms resting on the table. He did not press for details, did not demand an explanation. Instead, he simply nodded once as if her words made perfect sense to him. "Then this one is yours now," he said quietly. Eleanor's eyes snapped up to meet his, searching for the catch, the hidden price she would be expected to pay. But Cole's expression remained open and honest, and something in her chest loosened just a fraction. "I cannot pay you," she whispered. "Not right away, but I am a hard worker, I swear it. My father ran a boarding house in San Antonio, and I did most of the cooking and cleaning there since I was 12 years old." "Your father," Cole repeated, and there was a weight to those 2 words that told Eleanor he understood more than she had said aloud. She looked down at her plate, her appetite suddenly gone despite the gnawing hunger in her belly. He made arrangements, a marriage to a man nearly 3 times my age, a cattle baron from El Paso with a reputation for cruelty. I heard the servants talking about what happened to his first 2 wives. How they died under mysterious circumstances. I could not. Her voice cracked. I left in the middle of the night 3 days ago, took only what I could carry and started walking. Cole was quiet for a long moment, and when Eleanor finally gathered the courage to look at him again, she saw anger flickering in his eyes, but it was not directed at her. "You did the right thing," he said firmly. "No woman should be sold off like livestock, and no man has the right to force that choice." The simple validation of her decision, the acknowledgement that she had done what needed to be done, nearly undid Eleanor completely. She blinked rapidly against the tears that threatened to spill over and reached for the bread with shaking hands. "Eat," Cole said gently. "Then I will show you where you can sleep. There is a small room off the back of the house that I use for storage, but we can clear it out, get a proper bed in there. You will have your privacy and your own space." Over the next few weeks, Eleanor settled into a routine at the Garrett ranch that felt almost surreal in its normalcy. She woke before dawn to start breakfast, feeding Cole and the 2 ranch hands, Miguel and Thomas, who lived in the bunkhouse near the barn. She cleaned and mended and learned how to preserve vegetables from the garden that grew behind the house. In the evenings, after the dishes were done and the kitchen cleaned, she would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the rolling hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. Cole kept his distance, always respectful, always careful never to crowd her or make her feel trapped. But Eleanor found herself noticing things about him despite her best efforts to remain detached. The way he always made sure she had eaten before he took his own meal. How he would leave wildflowers on the kitchen table without comment, as if they had simply appeared there by magic. The patience he showed when teaching her how to ride, his hands steady on her waist as he helped her mount the gentle mare he had chosen specifically for her use. "Her name is Clover," Cole had said that first morning when he led the horse from the barn. "She is older, steady as they come, will not spook easily." Eleanor had been terrified, but she was determined not to show it. In this land, knowing how to ride was not a luxury but a necessity, and she refused to be helpless any longer. Under Cole's patient instruction, she learned to sit properly in the saddle, how to guide Clover with subtle movements of the reins, how to move with the horse rather than against it. "You are a natural," Cole had said after her 3rd lesson, and the pride in his voice had warmed her more than the afternoon sun. As October arrived and the air took on a cooler edge, Eleanor began to realize that what she felt for Cole Garrett had shifted from gratitude into something deeper and infinitely more complicated. She noticed the way her heart would lift when she heard his boots on the porch in the evening. How she found excuses to brush past him in the kitchen, craving even that innocent contact. The way his laugh, rare but genuine, could light up something inside her that she had thought long extinguished. It terrified her. One evening, as they sat on the porch together watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, Cole cleared his throat in a way that suggested he had something important to say. "Eleanor, I want you to know that you are safe here, for as long as you need. There is no expectation, no debt to be repaid. You understand that, right?" She turned to look at him, studying his profile in the dim light. "Why are you doing this? You do not know me. I could be anyone, could bring trouble right to your doorstep." Cole met her gaze steadily. "I reckon I am a pretty good judge of character, and I see a woman who made a brave choice, who walked away from a life that would have destroyed her. That takes courage. Besides," he added with a small smile, "you make the best biscuits I have ever tasted. Be ashamed to let you go." Eleanor felt herself smile despite the heaviness of the conversation. "Is that all I am worth to you, my biscuits?" Something flickered in Cole's eyes, something that made her breath catch. "No," he said quietly, "not even close." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. But before Eleanor could find the words to respond, the sound of hoofbeats broke the stillness of the night. Both of them stood, Cole's hand automatically moving to the gun at his hip as three riders emerged from the darkness and into the circle of light cast by the porch lantern. Eleanor's blood turned to ice when she recognized the man in the center. Harrison Webb, the cattle baron her father had promised her to, sat astride a massive black horse, his face hard as granite beneath his expensive hat. "Eleanor Hayes," Webb said, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. "Your father is worried sick. Time to stop this foolishness and come home." "I am home," Eleanor said, and she was surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. She moved closer to Cole, drawing strength from his solid presence beside her. Webb's eyes narrowed as he looked between them. "This saddle tramp offering you shelter. A roof over your head is not the same as a proper home, girl. Your father and I had an agreement. You were promised to me." "I promised nothing," Eleanor shot back, her fear transforming into anger. "I am not property to be bought and sold. You are your father's daughter, and he has the right to arrange your future as he sees fit." Webb's hand moved to rest on his own gun, a not-so-subtle threat. Cole stepped forward, putting himself slightly in front of Eleanor. "The lady has made her choice clear. I suggest you respect it and ride out of here before this situation gets unpleasant." Webb laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "You going to stop me, boy? You and what army?" The tension ratcheted up another notch, and Eleanor could see Miguel and Thomas emerging from the bunkhouse, clearly alerted by the commotion. They positioned themselves strategically, making it clear that Cole was not alone. "I am asking you politely to leave," Cole said, his voice level but carrying an undertone of steel. "Eleanor stays here of her own free will. She is under my protection now, and I do not take that lightly." Webb stared at Cole for a long moment, clearly trying to assess whether this cowboy would actually draw on him. Whatever he saw in Cole's face must have convinced him that the answer was yes, because he finally gathered his reins and yanked his horse's head around. "This is not over," he snarled at Eleanor. "Your father will hear about this and there will be consequences." "Let there be consequences," Eleanor said, her voice ringing clear in the night air. "I would rather face whatever comes than spend one day as your wife." Webb's face darkened with rage, but he spurred his horse forward, his two companions following behind. They watched until the riders disappeared into the darkness, the sound of hoofbeats gradually fading away. Only then did Eleanor realize she was shaking. Her legs gave out and she would have collapsed if Cole had not caught her, his arms coming around her with a gentleness that made her want to cry. "I have got you," he murmured against her hair. "You are safe. I promise you are safe." Eleanor buried her face against his chest, breathing in the scent of leather and horses and something uniquely Cole. For the first time since leaving San Antonio, she let herself fully break down, great wrenching sobs that seemed to come from the very depths of her soul. And through it all, Cole held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring words of comfort that she could not quite make out but that soothed her nonetheless. When the storm finally passed, Eleanor pulled back slightly, embarrassed by her display of emotion. "I am sorry. I did not mean to fall apart like that." "You have got nothing to apologize for," Cole said firmly. He reached up to wipe away a tear that still clung to her cheek, his touch infinitely gentle. "You have been holding all that inside for too long. Better to let it out." Eleanor looked up at him, really looked at him, and saw the same emotions she had been fighting reflected in his eyes. "Cole, I know," he said softly. "I feel it too. The kiss, when it came, was inevitable." Cole lowered his head slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, but Eleanor found herself rising on her toes to meet him halfway. His lips were warm and gentle against hers, asking rather than demanding, and when she sighed against his mouth and leaned into him, he deepened the kiss with a quiet groan that she felt all the way to her toes. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Why did you not? Did not want to scare you off. did not want you to think that shelter came with expectations. Eleanor's heart swelled with affection for this careful, considerate man. And now I am hoping you might feel the same way I do, because Eleanor Hayes, I have gone and fallen completely in love with you. The words should have terrified her. A month ago, they would have sent her running for the hills. But instead, Eleanor felt only a deep, abiding sense of rightness, as if everything in her life had been leading to this moment, this man, this place. "I love you too," she whispered, and saying the words aloud felt like the bravest thing she had ever done. Cole kissed her again, longer this time with more passion, and Eleanor let herself get lost in the sensation of being wanted and cherished and completely safe. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling like fools. The next few months passed in a blur of happiness that Eleanor had never imagined possible. Cole courted her properly, despite the fact that they were already living under the same roof. He brought her small gifts from town, took her on rides through the surrounding countryside, and spent hours talking with her on the porch swing he had installed specifically so they would have a comfortable place to sit together in the evenings. In December, as the first cold winds of winter began to sweep across the plains, Cole asked her to marry him. There was no elaborate production, no fancy ring. They were in the barn together, Eleanor helping him feed the horses, when he simply turned to her and said, "Marry me, Eleanor. Be my wife, my partner, build this life with me." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They married on Christmas Eve in the small church in the nearby town of Millerville, with Miguel and Thomas serving as witnesses and the local minister performing the ceremony. Eleanor wore a simple blue dress that she had sewn herself, and Cole wore his best suit, his hair slicked back and his eyes shining with unmistakable love as he watched her walk down the aisle. "I, Cole Garrett, take you, Eleanor Hayes, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said when the time came for vows, his voice steady and sure. "I promise to honor you, protect you, and love you for all the days of my life. You are my home, and I will spend every day making sure you know that you are cherished." Eleanor's own vows were spoken through happy tears. "I, Eleanor Hayes, take you, Cole Garrett, to be my lawfully wedded husband. You showed me what real love looks like, what it means to be respected and valued. You gave me a home when I had none, and a future when I thought I had lost everything. I promise to stand by your side, to build this life with you, and to love you with everything I have." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed her with a sweetness that made her heart overflow. As they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, Eleanor caught sight of their reflection in one of the church windows and hardly recognized herself. The frightened, desperate woman who had stumbled into Cole's ranch yard 4 months ago was gone. In her place was someone who stood tall and confident, secure in the knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. The wedding night was everything Eleanor had hoped for and nothing like what she had feared. Cole was patient and gentle, taking his time to make sure she felt comfortable and safe. When he finally made her his wife in truth as well as name, it was with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "I love you," he whispered against her skin. "My brave, beautiful Eleanor." "I love you too," she replied, pulling him closer. "My Cole." As winter gave way to spring, Eleanor blossomed in her new role as Cole's wife and full partner in running the ranch. She learned to help with the cattle, to read the weather signs, to manage the accounts and negotiate prices with the buyers who came from as far away as Kansas City. Cole valued her input on every decision, always asking her opinion and taking her suggestions seriously. In May, Eleanor discovered she was pregnant. She told Cole one evening after supper, her hands shaking slightly as she took his and placed them on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby," she said softly. Cole's face went through a series of expressions so rapidly that Eleanor almost laughed. Shock, joy, wonder, and finally a fierce protectiveness all flickered across his features before he pulled her into his arms and held her as if she were made of spun glass. A baby, he repeated, his voice filled with awe. Eleanor, you have made me the happiest man alive. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and as Eleanor's belly grew round with their child, Cole became increasingly attentive, always making sure she did not overwork herself and insisting she rest in the afternoons. Miguel's wife, Rosa, who lived in town, came out several times to check on Eleanor and offer advice, becoming a close friend in the process. In January of 1880, on a cold but clear winter morning, Eleanor gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The labor was long and difficult, but when the midwife finally placed the squalling infant in her arms, Eleanor felt a love so fierce and overwhelming that it took her breath away. "He is perfect," Cole said, his voice thick with emotion as he gazed down at his son. "He looks just like you." "He has your eyes," Eleanor countered, tracing a finger along the baby's soft cheek. They named him James after Cole's father who had passed years before, and from the moment he entered the world, that little boy became the center of their universe. Cole was a devoted father, walking the floors with James when he cried at night, changing diapers without complaint, and spending hours simply watching his son sleep with an expression of wonder on his face. As James grew from an infant into a rambunctious toddler, the ranch prospered. Word had spread about the quality of Cole's cattle and his fair dealings, and buyers began seeking him out specifically. The small operation that had been just barely turning a profit when Eleanor first arrived had grown into one of the most respected ranches in the region. But more than the financial success, what mattered to Eleanor was the life they had built together. The home they had created was filled with love and laughter, a place where she felt safe and valued and utterly cherished. Cole never let a day pass without telling her he loved her, and she made sure he knew how grateful she was for the life he had given her. In the summer of 1882, Eleanor gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Catherine. Unlike her brother's dramatic entrance into the world, Catherine arrived quickly and with minimal fuss, as if she had already decided that life was meant to be easy and pleasant. She had Eleanor's dark hair and Cole's gray eyes, and from the start, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. James, now 2.5 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister. He would sit beside her cradle for hours, telling her long, rambling stories that only he understood and bringing her his favorite toys to look at. Eleanor would often find Cole watching his children with an expression of such profound contentment that it made her heart ache with happiness. One evening, as they sat on the porch swing together watching the sunset, while the children played in the yard under Rosa's watchful eye, Cole turned to Eleanor and took her hand. "You ever think about that day you walked into my yard?" he asked. Eleanor smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "All the time. I think about how terrified I was, how certain I was that I had made a terrible mistake. I had nowhere to go, no plan, nothing but a desperate hope that anything would work out. And now I cannot imagine my life any other way. You gave me everything, Cole, a home, a family, a future. You gave me yourself." Cole kissed the top of her head. "You gave me just as much, you know. Before you came, this place was just a ranch, land and cattle and hard work, but you made it a home. You made it mean something." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sky deepened from gold to purple to the deep blue of twilight. James had discovered a grasshopper and was trying to catch it, his squeals of delight carrying across the yard, while Catherine dozed peacefully in Rosa's arms. "I got a letter from my father," Eleanor said quietly. She had not mentioned it earlier, not wanting to spoil the peaceful evening, but it had been weighing on her mind all day. Cole stiffened slightly. "What did it say?" "He wants to meet you, to meet his grandchildren. He said he is sorry for what he tried to do, that he understands now that he was wrong." Eleanor paused, choosing her words carefully. "He says Harrison Webb died last year. Apparently he was thrown from his horse and broke his neck. And how do you feel about that?" Eleanor considered the question. "I do not wish death on anyone, but I cannot pretend to mourn him either. As for my father, I do not know. Part of me wants to tell him it is too late, that he lost the right to be part of my life when he tried to sell me off like livestock. But another part thinks about James and Catherine, about how they might want to know their grandfather. It is your choice, Cole said firmly. Whatever you decide, I will support you completely. In the end, Eleanor agreed to let her father visit, though she made it clear in her response that forgiveness, if it came at all, would take time. When Joseph Hayes arrived at the ranch a month later, he was a smaller, grayer version of the man Eleanor remembered. The arrogance and certainty that had once defined him had been replaced by something that looked almost like humility. The first meeting was awkward, both of them unsure of what to say or how to bridge the gap that 3 years had created. But when James, with the fearless friendliness of a 4-year-old, walked right up to his grandfather and announced, "I got a new horse. His name is Thunder. Want to see him?" Something in Joseph's face cracked. "I would like that very much," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Over the next few days, Eleanor watched as her father made a genuine effort to connect with his grandchildren and to make amends for his past mistakes. He apologized repeatedly, not making excuses but simply acknowledging that he had been wrong and that he understood if Eleanor could never fully forgive him. "I was so focused on what I thought was best, on making a match that would be financially advantageous, that I never stopped to consider what you wanted. What you needed," Joseph said one evening as they sat together on the porch. "I treated you like a commodity instead of my daughter, and I will regret that for the rest of my life." Eleanor found herself softening despite her best efforts to maintain her anger. "You hurt me deeply. You made me feel like I did not matter, like my only value was in what kind of marriage I could make. I know, and I am sorry, truly, deeply sorry. It was not a complete reconciliation, but it was a start." When Joseph left to return to San Antonio a week later, it was with the understanding that he could visit again, that he could be part of his grandchildren's lives, but that the relationship between father and daughter would have to be rebuilt slowly, one careful step at a time. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own challenges and joys. The ranch expanded further, and Cole hired on additional hands to help manage the growing herd. Eleanor started a small side business selling her preserves and baked goods to the restaurants and hotels in Millerville, and her products became so popular that she could barely keep up with demand. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved books as much as he loved horses, often found reading in the hayloft when he was supposed to be doing chores. Catherine was her opposite, wild and fearless, always covered in dirt and scraped knees from her various adventures around the ranch. In 1885, Eleanor gave birth to their third child, another son they named Samuel. He was a quiet baby, content to watch the world around him with wide, solemn eyes, and as he grew older, he proved to have a gift for working with animals. Even the most skittish horse would calm under Samuel's gentle hands. Life was not without its difficulties. There were droughts that tested their resources, harsh winters that took a toll on the cattle, and the constant challenge of competing with larger ranches that had more capital and connections. But through it all, Cole and Eleanor faced everything together, their partnership stronger with each passing year. In the spring of 1888, on their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Eleanor by taking her away for a week, leaving the children in Rosa's capable care. They traveled to San Antonio, staying in a hotel that was far fancier than anything either of them was accustomed to, and spent their days exploring the city and their nights wrapped in each other's arms. 10 years, Eleanor mused as they sat together in a restaurant, toasting each other with glasses of wine. Sometimes it feels like it has been forever, and other times it feels like just yesterday that I walked into your yard. Best day of my life, Cole said, his eyes warm as they met hers across the table. Well, tied with the days each of our children were born and our wedding day, and that time you made that chocolate cake for my birthday. Actually, there have been a lot of best days. Eleanor laughed, the sound light and free. "You are impossible." "Impossibly in love with you," Cole countered, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Eleanor Garrett, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy with a small ranch and big dreams. Thank you for seeing past the desperate woman on your doorstep and recognizing someone worth saving." "You saved yourself," Cole said seriously. "You made the brave choice to walk away from a life that would have destroyed you. All I did was offer you a safe place to land." As they walked back to their hotel that night, Eleanor reflected on the truth of Cole's words. She had saved herself by choosing to run, by refusing to accept the future her father had planned for her. But Cole had given her something just as precious, a place to become the person she was always meant to be. When they returned home, they were greeted by 3 excited children and a ranch that had run smoothly in their absence thanks to Miguel's capable management. James, now 8 years old, had written a story about a knight who rescued a princess from a dragon, which he proudly presented to his parents. Catherine, age 6, had learned to whistle and demonstrated this new skill at every opportunity. And little Samuel, just 3, had befriended a stray cat that had wandered onto the property and was lobbying hard to be allowed to keep it. "Of course he can keep the cat," Eleanor said, watching as her youngest son carefully poured milk into a saucer for the scrawny orange creature. "Every ranch needs a good mouser." The look of pure joy on Samuel's face was worth any amount of trouble the cat might cause. As the 1880s gave way to the 1890s, Eleanor watched as her children grew and the world around them changed. The wild frontier of her youth was slowly being tamed, with more towns springing up and the railroad expanding its reach. But the ranch remained a constant, a piece of land that represented everything she and Cole had built together. James, showing an aptitude for business that neither of his parents possessed, began helping with the financial side of the ranch operation. At 15, he could negotiate with buyers and manage accounts with a skill that impressed everyone who dealt with him. He talked about going to college someday, perhaps studying law or business, and both Cole and Eleanor encouraged his ambitions. Catherine, true to her wild nature, had become an exceptional horsewoman. At 13, she could ride better than most of the ranch hands and had a gift for training horses that showed difficult temperaments. She talked constantly about entering riding competitions and maybe someday having her own horse-breeding operation. Samuel, at 11, remained the quietest of their children but also the most observant. He noticed everything, from which cattle were showing signs of illness before anyone else saw symptoms to when someone was upset even if they tried to hide it. He had a gentleness about him that reminded Eleanor of Cole, and she suspected he would grow up to be the kind of man who made the world a better place simply by being in it. In the spring of 1893, Eleanor's father passed away in his sleep. She traveled to San Antonio for the funeral, bringing all 3 children with her. As she stood beside his grave, she felt a complicated mixture of grief and relief. They had never fully repaired their relationship, but over the years they had found a kind of peace with each other. Joseph had been a devoted grandfather, and for that, at least, Eleanor could be grateful. The reading of the will brought an unexpected surprise. Joseph had left the boarding house and a substantial sum of money to Eleanor, along with a letter that explained he had been setting aside funds for years specifically for her and her children. "I know I can never make up for what I tried to do," the letter read in her father's familiar handwriting. "But I hope this legacy can provide some security for you and your family and serve as proof that I recognize the error of my ways. You built a good life for yourself, Eleanor, far better than anything I could have arranged. I am proud of the woman you became, and I hope someday you can forgive me." Eleanor wept as she read the letter, Cole's arms coming around her from behind as he read over her shoulder. "He tried in the end," Cole said gently. "That has to count for something." "It does," Eleanor agreed. "It really does." The inheritance allowed them to expand the ranch even further and to set aside funds for their children's futures. But more than the financial benefit, the letter gave Eleanor a sense of closure. Her father had acknowledged his mistakes and made what amends he could. It was enough. The years continued their steady march forward. James left for college in Austin in 1895, writing long letters home about his studies and his adventures in the big city. Catherine began competing in riding competitions, winning more often than not and making a name for herself across Texas. Samuel took on more responsibilities at the ranch, working alongside his father and proving himself to be a natural cattleman. In 1898, Eleanor and Cole celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary surrounded by family and friends. The party, held at the ranch, drew people from all over the region, a testament to the respect and affection the Garrett family had earned over the years. As Eleanor looked around at the assembled crowd, at her grown and growing children, at the ranch that had become so much more than just a place to live, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the life she had built. All of it had started with a desperate gamble, with putting one foot in front of the other and walking away from everything she knew. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked, sliding an arm around her waist and pulling her close. "How happy I am. How grateful I am for all of this, for you, for our family, for having the courage to run away all those years ago." Cole kissed her temple gently. "And I am grateful that you stumbled onto my ranch that day. Best thing that ever happened to me." They stood together, watching as their children laughed and danced with friends, as neighbors shared food and stories, as the sun set over the land they had worked so hard to build into something meaningful. This was home, Eleanor thought. Not the place she had been born, not the boarding house where she had spent her childhood. Home was here, with Cole, with their children, with the life they had created together from nothing but hope and hard work and love. As the years turned into decades, Cole and Eleanor grew old together. Their hair turned gray, their faces lined with wrinkles earned from years of laughter and hard work and time spent outdoors. But their love remained constant, as strong and sure as it had been that night on the porch when Cole had first kissed her. James became a successful lawyer, settling in Austin but visiting the ranch regularly with his wife and children. Catherine married a fellow horse trainer and started her own breeding operation on a piece of land adjacent to the family ranch. Samuel took over the day-to-day operations of the Garrett ranch, working alongside his father until Cole's aging body could no longer keep up with the demands of ranch life. In 1910, on a warm summer evening, Cole and Eleanor sat together on the porch swing that had been their favorite spot for over 30 years. They were both in their early 60s now, their children grown and their grandchildren running around the yard the same way James, Catherine, and Samuel once had. "You have any regrets?" Cole asked, his hand finding Eleanor's as naturally as breathing. Eleanor thought about the question, really considered it. She thought about the frightened girl who had run away in the night, about the desperate woman who had walked into a stranger's yard with nothing but hope and determination. She thought about all the years since, the challenges and triumphs, the sorrows and joys. "Not a single one," she said finally. "Every choice I made, even the scary ones, led me here, led me to you. How could I regret that?" Cole smiled, the same warm smile that had made her heart flutter all those years ago. "I love you, Eleanor Garrett. Have since the moment you walked into my yard looking like you would fight the whole world if you had to. I love you too, Cole Garrett. Thank you for giving me a home when I needed one most." "It was always yours," Cole said, echoing the words he had spoken that first day. "From the moment you arrived, this home was yours." They sat together as the sun set, surrounded by the sounds of their family, the land they had built their life on stretching out before them. And Eleanor knew, with a certainty that went bone deep, that running away from the only home she knew had been the bravest and best decision she had ever made. Because it had led her here, to this moment, to this man, to this beautiful life that was so much richer and fuller than anything she could have imagined. The ranch continued to thrive under Samuel's management, and as Cole and Eleanor's health began to decline in their later years, they had the comfort of knowing that everything they had built would continue. Their legacy was not just in the land or the cattle, but in the family they had raised and the love that bound them all together. Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep in the winter of 1916, Cole holding her hand just as he had held it through all the years of their marriage. She was 70 years old and had lived a life so full and rich that she had no reason to fear death when it came for her. Cole followed her less than 6 months later, dying in the same bed they had shared for nearly 40 years. His children found him there one morning, a peaceful expression on his face and a smile on his lips, as if in death he had found Eleanor waiting for him. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, their graves marked with simple headstones that bore their names and the dates of their births and deaths. But the real monument to their love was not made of stone. It was in the ranch that still operated successfully, passed down through generations. It was in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their blood and their values forward into the future. It was in the story that became family legend, told and retold about the brave young woman who ran away from an arranged marriage and the cowboy who offered her a home. And if sometimes, on quiet evenings when the sun set over the hills in shades of gold and purple, the current residents of the Garrett ranch claimed to see two figures sitting on the old porch swing, hand in hand as they watched the world go by, well, that seemed entirely fitting. Some loves were strong enough to last not just a lifetime but beyond it. Eleanor and Cole's was one of those loves, a testament to the power of choosing courage over fear, hope over despair, and love over everything else. The ranch continued to prosper into the modern age, but the story remained the same at its heart. It was the story of a woman who ran away from the only home she knew and found something far better waiting for her. It was the story of a cowboy who saw past desperation to the strength beneath. And it was, above all, a story about how home is not always the place you start, but the place you build with the people you love. Their great-granddaughter, herself named Eleanor, would eventually write down the full story, preserving it for future generations. She conducted interviews with the oldest family members who remembered Cole and Eleanor, pieced together letters and diary entries, and created a comprehensive history of the ranch and the love story that had founded it. The book became a cherished family heirloom passed down with the land itself, a reminder of where they had come from and the values that had built their legacy. And so the story lived on, as all the best stories do. It was told to children at bedtime, to teenagers struggling with their own difficult choices, to young adults trying to figure out where they belonged in the world. It reminded them that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what everyone expects of you and toward the life you know you deserve. It taught them that home is not always where you are born, but where you are loved. And it showed them that real, lasting love is built not just on passion, but on respect, partnership, and the daily choice to stand beside someone through whatever comes. The land that Cole and Eleanor had worked so hard to build remained in the family, a testament to everything they had believed in and fought for. And though the world changed around it, though technology advanced and society evolved in ways they never could have imagined, the essential truth at the heart of their story remained constant. That love, real love, has the power to transform everything, to turn strangers into soulmates and a piece of land into a home that lasts for generations. Eleanor Hayes Garrett had run away from the only home she knew and found not just a new home, but a love that would echo through time. And Cole Garrett had opened his heart and his home to a desperate stranger and found the other half of his soul. Together, they had built something that lasted far beyond their own lives, a legacy of love and courage that would inspire their descendants for generations to come. That was the true happy ending. Not just that they lived and loved and built a life together, but that their love created ripples that spread outward, touching lives they would never meet, shaping a future they could only dream of. Every choice they made, every challenge they faced together, every moment of joy and sorrow they shared, became part of a story that would be told and retold, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life come from the bravest choices. And if you were to visit the Garrett Ranch today, you would still see that porch swing, carefully maintained and repaired over the years, still overlooking the same hills that Cole and Eleanor watched together for so many evenings. You would see the ranch still operating, still thriving, still built on the same principles of hard work and integrity that they established. And you would feel, perhaps, a sense of something enduring, something that speaks to the heart of what it means to find where you belong. Because Eleanor did not just run away that day in 1878. She ran toward something better, braver, truer. She ran toward love and home and a future that exceeded her wildest dreams. And that, perhaps, is the most important part of the story. That sometimes you have to leave behind everything you know to find everything you need.